meeting to order in a timely fashion. Our first order of business is to start our regular meeting. And then at 7:10, we'll suspend our regular meeting and open the public hearing. So bear with us, please. Okay, roll call.
David Campbell.
Richard Bennett.
Jane Mel.
Bill Terry.
Scott Badger.
Sarah Kimball.
And Jim Wasco is not here. He will not attend tonight. And Bob Thompson will arrive shortly.
Shortly.
Or lately, or however which way he wants to characterize that. Jim, with Jim not being here, you will be a voting member this evening. And that will extend into the public hearing. During the public hearing, if that were not the case, you would have to sit out and be a member of the public, which is a weird thing, but that's how it works. Just those are the rules. I don't make them, I just have to follow or try to. Okay, so our first order of business is to review improved minutes from December 11th meeting. They're long, and if you did review them, good job. If you didn't, this is not the best opportunity to do so.
Make a motion that we accept the minute.
I have a motion to accept the minutes, and I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes have been accepted. All right, I wanted to make sure we took a few minutes just to review and have a brief discussion before we open the public hearing. Between last meeting and today, we've had some comment from our legal counsel. I think, David, you did provide that to
Yes.
everyone?
Yes.
Okay. And most of it is the same. We had a little discussion about something that we didn't address and someone else thought we ought to, and by the time we finished, we convinced council that we didn't have to do that. So that's good. So we're down to some of the basics. I think the only difference really is that we are at a little bit stronger place in terms of being these, and I'm not sure I'm totally sure about this as to whether or not we're the totally responsible party for the Keno piece.
Correct.
But if I understood the minutes from the select board meeting, they're expecting that we'll manage that. And so we'll talk about that as part of what's going on, but I think that's.
So I just have a question on that.
Yeah.
So when the state basically says unless you opt out, you automatically opt in.
Yes.
But where we have a permissive zoning ordinance and if we don't designate that it's an allowable, does the state trump the local?
Except for the fact that for gambling, we use it as an exception in the village district, if you'll read the way it's set up.
What we're doing now?
Yeah, well, what we have in the regular,
Okay.
it is set up such that it is not a permissive situation. If you take a look at it, it's the permitted except for, and then gambling is an except for. So we're just staying in lockstep with what we have done in the past. I agree with you, but the other thing is that it has to be an affirmative vote to say no.
And so how many, if you have a permissive zoning, but then you have how many except fors can you have before it's no longer permissive?
Actually, if you've read any of your insurance, is
No.
it,
I have not.
I mean, this is, they take it to the extreme. But what we have is what is accepted in the rural residential, and then we have what uses that are permitted in the village district. And you can have all the uses from the rural residential in addition with restaurants, and then you can have professional or commercial business, except for, and then those listed. And so
Right,
this is-
and I don't mean to divert things, it's more just a philosophical question. If your ordinance is a permissive ordinance. in other
It
words, you-
is for all of it except
no,
for these.
Right, but it seems like at some point, if you have enough except fors, it's no longer permissive because you're accepting everything that, you know.
You're right.
There's the balance between.
You're absolutely right. But I have, you know, we're trying to work within the structure that we have available to us, and also the fact that this has to be a vote. So,
Mhm.
and you have to also then reflect that
And this, I wasn't really asking
either
about
in
this
an
so
either
much, it was
in
more
a
general.
select board ordinance or in, and I believe we can do it in the planning board
Right,
ordinance.
since
if I'm
we
not-
already have
Since we already have
casino.
gambling in
casino
there.
gambling.
I believe we can do it in that format, and I think that's what we got affirmation from legal on that. The only other thing is that there's some wording change on the short-term rental that was recommended by council. I believe it obtains the same objective, but I think as part of the public hearing, we can go through that and make sure we're on the same page with what council suggested, that we change the wording, which he suggested, gets to the same place, but is more legally defensible than the wording that we had. I thought our wording was just fine, but I'm not going there.
Really, because you and I totally disagree.
Okay, and we'll have a conversation about it, okay, as part of the deal and see where we get to.
Yep.
And that's part of what I think we need to do, the public hearing. And, let's see, we will reopen our regular meeting, and I do have one thing that I would like to mention that we don't have in the minutes, and that is that we do need to recommend a budget for 2026 to the select board. The reason I think we need to mention that is that we pared back our budget considerably this year because we haven't spent money in each of the past few years. We've been very good about not spending money, except for recording minutes and buying our annual book. But this coming year, our intention is, I believe, to redo the master plan. And if that is the case, whether or not we need to expand our budget to a higher number than just the basics for any surveys we might do, I don't think we're going to spend the $100,000 that Conway did in order to hire an outside consultant. So I don't think we need to consider that, but I think there might be some residual costs associated with that. And Sarah, you have the best handle on that from the last one we did because you were chair at the time.
I have to look back as I don't.
And so perhaps we might talk about that a little bit at our next meeting. Now I've used up the 2 minutes to get to our 7:10. I'd like to suspend our regular meeting and open up our public hearing. Welcome. Welcome. There's a concert next door, by the way, if you're really bored with what's going on, but we're competing with them, and I'm sure we'll be less interesting.
Well, if thought this was a sold-out show when I pulled into the parking lot.
It's looking good, it's looking good. So welcome, welcome. We appreciate you being here, and purpose of a public hearing is for us to listen. And so we hope that you'll, if you have anything to say, say it. We went through the roll call. I don't know that we need to do it again, but just to introduce, because Bob Thompson, who's our selectmen's representative, welcome. This young fellow here, it's very nice. Most of these guys are young fellows compared to me. Scott is our vice chair, our secretary, David Campbell, and Jane is an alternate, but she's voting tonight. And Dick has been a select board member, a chair of this committee, conservation committee member, and probably 6 other things that I don't know about. And so, oh, by the way, Scott's a former chair of the planning board, and Sarah Kimball is also a former chair of the planning board and is probably our resident historian and expert on everything. And we really rely on her for that. Okay, so that's us. We've done our voting member determination. It's the same as the regular meeting. Everybody here is voting, so we don't have to have anybody sit out. That's good. Basic deal is I get to be the chair, and I will recognize you as long as you're on point and you're talking reasonably. You keep on talking. If you make crazy comments or you're far out, I may say time out and we'll get back to business here. But generally, you like to hear people, and even if you have a different perspective, that's okay, because that sometimes helps us adjust ours. Topics. Okay, we have tonight some basic items. The state legislature's been really busy this year, especially with things that affect land use boards. Many of the things that they passed have no bearing on us, largely because we don't have a sewer system in town. And a lot of the things they passed were intended to increase density for towns that have the ability to have better density. Unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in a situation where our septic systems are ruled more by whether or not they can drain properly and not affect somebody else as well, and things of that nature. And we do have a water system, but it only feeds the village and not the entire town. So a lot of the things that got passed had no effect on us. We tried to pay attention to all the things that were out there. I think we did a reasonably good job at it. If we missed, we could have missed stuff, but we don't think we did. So several of the items that are going to be talked about tonight are just strictly the state is overriding any local provision. And they're saying, you've got this, you've got to have this now. And several of the things that are here are intended to put us in compliance with state law, what is now state law. And so even if they got voted down, we'd have to change. But we expect that it's better to put them before a vote so everyone's familiar with what the changes are. Because state rules override local rules if they're more stringent. All right, but let's go. The first one that we have on the topics that we said in the agenda was on short-term rentals. I'll briefly describe what that is intended to do, and that is that our current short-term rental provision allows for folks in the residential district, if they had short-term rentals prior to 2019 when we passed this. It's It's a lot of years ago now. You could qualify for not having any restriction on the number of rentals that you would have. But the ordinance says that going forward, you would be subject to 30 rental limit. And when we set the 30 rental limit, we did that in really talking to short-term rental owners. We had people like Scott Kudrick in the room that we were talking to, who has gained infamy since. But we originally started out with 25 that we picked out as a number, and we talked to the folks, we listened, and they said, if you use 30, it's pretty much going to cover most people for most situations. But the reason we did it, and Scott's really good about saying this, is that if we have investors coming through and looking at our town for short-term rental, having any kind of limits at all tends to keep your investor dollars someplace else, because they can't use it as 300 nights a year, and yet they could do 300 nights a year if they kept it down to 30 incidents of rental. But it's a restriction. Restrictions tend to keep money pushed someplace else, and that's why we did it. All we're trying to do now is say that, gee, we've had this many years that we've been in, and you can't go back now and say, gee, I'm just applying for my short-term rental conditional use permit. And I've been doing this all along, and I want to be able to have the no limit deal. It's already been 5 years or so that you've had the opportunity to qualify. Your property is not having 30 rentals, and what have you been doing out of compliance for 5 years? And the answer is, oops. We just want to close the door on that and say, look, everybody going forward, when you apply, if you're in the residential district, you're not going to get the unlimited, you're going to have the 30 rentals. And that's all that is. Now the question is what the language is. And here we had some language that we started with, and we've had some input from legal counsel to make a change to that. And David, I'm going to let you kind of run through that, because you're the one who seems to suggest that it may not do what we want it to do.
Correct.
And you will allow commentary at some point.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, we get a
Sure.
public comment first. Please identify yourself.
I'm Lisa Day Moser. I live on Green Hill. And I have lived in Jackson now, will be 35 years in May. And, I've been a taxpayer, I've been an active volunteer in the community for all those years. And I just want to point out that, there are some quandaries for some of us. Like many people, my children, my grandchildren have grown up. My home has outgrown me. And I have been working to make my home handicapped accessible because of health conditions, and I will eventually be there. In this process, I have thought in terms of short-term rentals, and I myself would prefer to be more a long-term rental person. However, I have 2 people living in my home, so I'm not able to use that as a short-term rental while they're there. They're not paying any rent, and I have wanted to put my home office in the space. But my parents are aging, and after having my mother in the ICU 2 years ago for 57 days and having to move myself to Lewiston, Maine, it's becoming very clear that my parents are going to have issues, and my mother would very much, as my stepfather would very much like to die at home. And that would be my goal, that they take my space that I had hoped to use long-term rental office for myself, that if they need, I would put them in that space. It doesn't allow me to do a short-term rental or doing a long-term rental when I might have to say, oh, you're out of here, you gotta go, and trying to evict someone. And the only thing that would really work for me is to use the space as a short-term rental. And I would prefer, naturally, having been here a long time, to have a contingent for those of us who have lived here many years and contributed to the tax base and contributed to the community, to be able to have the same rights as someone who came in 2019. And, you know, I would rather not be limited. And, you know, I think the tax increases are going to harm a lot of people. And I may be one of those people, you know, and so I would like to see some contingency for people who are in my situation, who, you know, have lived here and contributed for a long time.
Any other comments? Thank you for your comment. Okay, open for board discussion?
Did anybody else read Jason's recommended suggested language? I don't know if anybody else read it, but his last comment was, to us, was that his changes does not eliminate the grace period. The comment that he wrote to us, looks like, the 30th of December, it said, as the short-term rental language, to be clear, my language does not end the grace period. The reason.
What is his language? How does he want to change?
What he wants to change basically is what it says today.
It says on this.
What he wants to change is short-term rentals in existence in the rural residential after the time of adoption of the ordinance at the 12 March 20 annual meeting and up to the date of March 10, 2026 annual meeting, and for which an application of a conditional use permit has been received prior to March 10, 2026, shall be exempt from the restrictions of the number of annual rentals. So it is basically saying the same thing it does today. If you were in existence prior to March of 2020, you will still have the exemption moving forward.
If you have your CUP.
If your application is in by March 10, 2026. Is it? Am I reading
So-
that right?
Right.
So all he's doing is adding it to make sure that it's referring to people who were already grandfathered.
Correct.
So my interpretation would be, if you put your application in on March 11, 2026, then you are not going to be exempt from the restriction.
Right. The restriction will apply to you.
Yeah, the 30-day restriction will apply to anyone,
30 rentals, not 30 days.
30 rentals, sorry.
And I realize that I could do that now,
Mhm.
and it would be acceptable, but it doesn't feel authentic to me when I know that I already have 2 people living there to then put forth and, you know, pay the fee, that's fine, but to also, you know, put things in with the state. And I know of someone who did that and then didn't do their short-term rental, and then the state came and said, oh, you know, you haven't paid anything, and they said, well, because I haven't rented anything. And then they had to go through a lot of paperwork and affidavits saying that, no, I didn't rent it. So I don't really want to put myself in that position. I realize if that's what I have to do, fine, I'll do that, but it doesn't seem authentic to say I'm doing a short-term rental when I might not be doing it for a year.
And again, what we wanted to do was ban short-term rentals, period. And
No,
that was what we meant to do, and what we came up with instead was a compromise, which basically said that's not an acceptable pattern for people in Jackson, because people in Jackson have done short-term rentals in the past. And so we basically said, okay, what is a reasonable amount of rental process that gets us somewhere between none and just total freedom, which we have in the commercial district for anybody to do short-term rentals willy-nilly. And what we came up with 30 rentals, which most folks who are in the short-term rental business said 30 rentals covers our most circumstances for us. It's not really going to limit what we do, because we usually, when you think about that, if you do if you subtract out the weeks where people don't want to be here, and the ones that people do want to be here, and you don't want to rent your place out for just one night because it's not profitable to do so, 30 rentals pretty much covers most people's understanding of how many they might want to have anyway, unless they're running it as a full-time business.
Well, I'd like the freedom to choose myself what scenario would work best for me.
Again, that is already the ordinance, is that you can't do that, all right? We already have, it's been 5 years since we passed that. We're not taking anything away from anyone. What we're simply saying is that we're trying to eliminate the chance that someone says that they've been a short-term rental user and someone who's been doing that business, and all of a sudden now 5 years later they come in and apply and say, I think I should be able to get what you're asking for is already in the ordinance. You can't do that. All right, we've already taken that away.
but you could still
But you can still do
apply
short-term.
for a short-term rental a year from now, and you would, and unless you're in the commercial district, I don't know if your house is.
Well, I'm residential and
Residential.
commercial. I can have an in-home business, so, you know, that's unusual. But
So you
that
are.
is the case with my
No,
property.
the commercial district is 500 feet from the Route 16. You can have,
You're very close, Lisa. Are you?
Well, this is how I purchased the home, and this, I was told I had commercial and residential, and I could have up to 5 in-house employees.
If you're in the commercial district, you don't have a
Then I don't
problem
have
at
to
all.
do what?
Excuse me, this is not the conversation we're having tonight. We're having a conversation about the grandfather clause in our short-term rental ordinance. If you'd like us to change our short-term rental ordinance in the fashion that you're discussing, that's for another time. You can always consider changes like you're discussing, but that's not what we're looking at tonight. That would be for.
and you don't have an application now, right? Is that
No, I
correct?
haven't filled one out, and I spoke with Kevin about this, and he knew nothing about this when I spoke with
Right.
him on.
And this
Monday.
really only applies for people who are actively short-term rentals. They have a room and meals tax. And if you don't have that, it doesn't apply. What you're asking for, everything that you're talking about, has nothing to do with what we're talking about this evening. It does, to Scott's point, it's not germane to what we're discussing this evening. So I'm going to close it down. But let's talk about the language, please.
Right, the language, if you read his language, it's basically saying after the time of the adoption of the law, of the ordinance,
Yeah,
not prior.
yeah,
So he's basically giving, his language would give people the ability to have unlimited rentals if you started as of 2020 to 2026. So in the past 6 years, you would be exempt, which was not the intent of our change.
Correct.
Therefore, when we asked him to clarify that, he did come out and say, no, my language does not eliminate the grace period of people who had short-term rentals prior to March of 2020. That was the small group, which we all kind of discussed, is probably like less than 2% of the short-term rentals, because we've had so many apply already. It was just kind of closing the door. And he suggested that we don't put that language in.
So the language that we have proposed here, which is written on the sheet that everybody's looking at, it says that if you apply for a short-term rental after March 20th, then it doesn't apply to you.
So is Jason saying that we can't?
Correct.
It's not a question of language, it's a
It's
question of
okay.
whether we can or cannot remove the grandfathering.
He said that we can
I mean,
do
I can-
whatever we want.
I can certainly see that we can't remove anyone who came in before now and got the CPU under that grandfather clause. We can't remove that, you know, we can't change things on them.
That's correct.
But if they haven't gotten a conditional use permit, I mean, at this point, either they have not done any short-term rentals for 6 years,
Correct.
or they've been acting out of compliance to our ordinance.
Correct.
And just, I mean, but,
Yeah, his argument, and he has in the comment, he says his argument is that his language does not unexempt anyone. It just draft the language that would apply going forward.
but is he saying that we cannot unexempt someone?
Yeah, he's basically saying RSA 674-19 might cause an issue.
Yeah, what he drafted would only go forward, which we've already dealt with that moving forward. Any new rentals are limited to the 30 rentals, any new. So,
But we already have that.
yes, but he's actually making like an exemption for those people over the past 6 years, which would be
Well, they
interesting.
already have a CPU, which
I
is,
know.
which goes with the land. We can't do anything with that
Right.
anyhow.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like he's saying don't change anything.
That's correct.
Oh.
That if you had a rental before March of 2020 and you apply today and you can apply next year, you would still get the exemption.
So anyway, the language that was up for consideration is the one that is in front of you, and that is, and for which an application of conditional use permit has been received prior to March 10, 2026. We'll have the opportunity to vote in a regular meeting whether or not we wish to adopt the council's wording or our original wording, and whether or not we consider that to be a significant change or not, and whether or not we need another public hearing as a result. But that is not what we're supposed to be doing for the public hearing, so let's move on.
So are we, this is the language we're adopting, and to be clear, Jason felt like it was, he didn't say we couldn't do it, he said it was legally problematic. So if we get 3 more lawyers in a room for a total of 4, we'll have about 6 different opinions.
Yes.
And I get that, but I feel that the impetus for changing the language in the zoning ordinance was so we could make it clear on the application, because it was pretty obvious to us that there were people reading that and feeling like, well, if I claim I was doing short-term rentals before March 2020, then I can have an unlimited short-term rental property. And that there were people making that claim
And
that couldn't really verify that.
Yeah, and that wasn't the intention of what we intended,
Right.
what we had in the
And
ordinance.
so this allows us to change that application so it's clear. Is it legally problematic or not, or what? I think clarifying that application is going to eliminate people trying to game things.
If we had not put in that language about grandfather in the first place, would short-term rentals that had occurred prior to the adoption of the ordinance have been grandfathered
Yes,
naturally?
yes. So, yes. So again, this part of the discussion, we need to do at our regular meeting, not as part of the public hearing. Let's move on. Okay, next one is to modify the ordinance for the number of parking spaces for residential dwelling units. And state law now says you have to only allow for one space per dwelling unit. Our current ordinance says two. Have to change it from 2 to 1. So we're changing it from 2 to 1. Any comments? We don't really have a choice here, but go ahead.
I thought a town could be stricter than the state with their own.
Unless the state says we can't.
The state has changed and said the minimum that you,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. Okay.
okay, you can only require one.
Yeah.
And so before we could require 2, it was okay. Now we can't. It says you can only require 1, and therefore we have to
Accommodate.
do what we're being asked to do, and that is to reduce it down to allow for 1 space per dwelling unit instead of allowing for.
I imagine it goes 0, but
Before it was, we allowed, we required 2. Now we're only allowed,
Parking guideline is the way it's listed for the chart, is it?
Yeah.
All the uses and how many for the different,
yeah, it's only the first line. of
it's
that
just the
chart.
first line.
yeah, I know, it's parking, so,
So we're gonna change it from 2 to 1.
and you can have 2 if you want to.
Oh, you can have 3 if you want.
That's right.
Right,
But the building inspector can't say, gee, you only put 1 on your plat, and that's not acceptable. All right, modify the ordinance for accessory apartments regarding ingress and egress regulations. Again, this is another deal where they actually changed the language. They also made some other changes that didn't apply to us because we were already more liberal than what the law allowed previously, and we were good with that. And that is that for an accessory dwelling unit, before you had to have a door, if you were attached, you had to have a door that actually went between the 2 units. Now they're saying, nope, you don't need that. And that you shall have an independent means of ingress and egress, or such means through a common space. A shared hallway shared with principal dwelling unit. And this again is the exact language that is in the ordinance, in the RSA. So it changes it to comply exactly with the new RSA wording. Comments, questions? Okay. And modify the ordinance on accessory apartments to limit the number of occupants. Again, we had a an occupancy limit in our ordinance that basically said for, I think it was, one person per every 250 square feet. And basically they said, can't do that anymore. And they basically said that you cannot limit it to less than 2 occupants per bedroom. So now we've asked to make the change here so that no accessory apartment shall have more than 2 occupants per bedroom. Again,
Is there any language stating the size of a bedroom?
well, there is a habitable room description in the building code.
Yes.
And so, yes,
Those apply?
those apply,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
We aren't intending to rewrite the building code and put it
Right.
into our ordinance, so, but yeah, there are things in the building, you're familiar with that more than I am. The intention really is to make sure that we don't have a situation where we put a number in our ordinance that can be contested. So basically, they said, yeah, you can limit it, but not to less than 2 occupants per bedroom. So it's 2 occupants per bedroom. And which, by the way, also fits with the international code,
Yeah.
which is the intention. Any-
Then it goes on to say, with the number of bedrooms determined by the lesser of the number of bedrooms listed on either the building permit, tax card, or septic plan. Do we have at least one of those for every resident in town?
You have to have one of those, because everybody has a tax card.
All right.
Yeah, okay,
And so you have to have at least one of those. Most folks have a septic plan.
okay.
If it's new, it's gonna have a building permit. But yeah, if it's less than, 30-something, 40 years old, we have a septic plan as well.
And they do have to show a septic plan that will accommodate any additional bedrooms.
As part of the whole process of
They
doing
don't
the
have to put it
application. So
in place.
So this is not an additional requirement, it just simply makes certain that someone doesn't make a claim. Well, I have 6 bedrooms, and it's like, well, yeah, okay, show me.
It's the same language from the short-term.
And it is the same language we stole from the short-term rental.
Is our verification process.
And we did test that again with council, make sure we were good on that. And just as a side, we had some question around minimum sizes, and it appears we can still maintain minimum size of 350 square feet. So there's no change, and there was some discussion around that, but it doesn't really affect what we're doing. Last but not least, the legislature passed a new RSA that basically says Keno will be permitted everywhere unless the town opts out from it. And they have to do so by June of 2027. So we kind of ran this up the flagpole as to whether or not we could do this in the planning board zoning ordinance, or whether or not it had to go through the select board. And we believe that we can do this as long as it is voted on and documented within our zoning ordinance. And so the language is, shall we modify the ordinance for districts and district regulations regarding games of chance. We already prohibit gambling, so shall we prohibit the operations of games of chance within the village district? So that the games of chance, and it's to see if the town will vote to adopt an amendment to the Jackson zoning ordinance, section 4, districts and district regulations, sections 4.3.2.1.3, item 4, to be modified to read games of chance, including but not limited to casino and casino gambling. Any conversation?
Yeah, I don't have the full ordinances in front of me currently, but since you have a number of facilities, I believe that Eagle Mountain, Whitney's, et cetera, are not in the commercial, in the village district, does this prohibit them, or does it not prohibit them from implementing Keno?
Okay, I think if you maybe heard the question that Scott had asked earlier around whether or not we have a permissive zoning ordinance or not, and we have you are,
We say what you're permitted to do.
we only identify things you're permitted to do, and you're not permitted to do those things in the residential district, so you were prohibited from doing them. Now, currently, whether you're commercial property or not a commercial property, if you are outside the 500 feet, and what we're saying is that currently, it's not permitted anywhere in town. We don't care who you are and where you live, it's not permitted. And what we're saying is we're adding Keno specifically to add to that it is also not allowed. And we have to do that by a positive vote on that to say that we don't want it. We have to opt out basically to say we do not want, because the state's basically said, ollie in free, everybody can do that. And the answer is, everybody can do that except.
So, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but currently we don't limit it to the village district. It covers the entire town.
It's under the village district, 422.
Yeah.
That's the reason I'm raising the question.
Right,
I mean,
But-
why not restrict it from the entire town?
well,
It is. It's eliminated from residential because of the nature of the way the zoning, and it is eliminated from the village today. Casino gambling is not allowed at all in the town, anywhere.
You're saying it's not allowed in the residential because we don't allow commercial in residential, is that?
no,
No,
no, it's, uses permitted
right.
is 4311, and there are 10 uses permitted, and none of them is gambling,
In residential?
residential. So that means if you're not one of those 10 farms, single-family homes, parks, open space, etc., if you're not
Right.
one of that,
But if you're
you're not
already
one.
not one of those, you're a hotel. And we do, and I know this is not likely, but we do allow home businesses, which are 3 employees or less, with the owner living in the house. And
Mhm.
I don't know why someone couldn't set up a couple casino machines in a residential house with 3 employees that they live in. No, I don't think it's likely, but,
Mm.
so my question is why not just not allow it anywhere in the town, but not rely on sort of default situation with residentials?
And you have to think about the fact that the Eagle Mountain House, Whitney, Black Mountain, if someone were to claim they had some form of gambling back in 19X and their grandfathered. So, to your point, Scott, just blanket the whole thing so that there's not some loophole like snowmaking that was pre-zoning, blah, blah, blah. Now it can be to the nth degree. So someone was playing blackjack in Whitney's Inn, do they have a foothold for gambling? I'm stretching it, but.
Yeah, and a permissive zoning ordinance, if it's not allowed, it's not allowed, it's illegal. So if you're.
Unless they grandfather.
No, it's,
Well, yeah,
but,
because,
maybe if you have something 1860 and you could prove it, yeah,
Well, I'm not a lawyer, I'm throwing out a hypothetical.
yeah.
right,
Whereas Scott's approach is if you blanket the whole town.
Sarah, you're a parliamentarian.
I am not a lawyer either, I just, read the.
I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with what your comment is.
Somebody's gonna read that and say, well, I'm
Not in the
not
village district.
village district, so, maybe I can have games of chance, or I may be in the village district, but I can provide evidence that at one point in time gambling was allowed here, and that's all a bevy of lawyers need, is my experience with it. I mean, it seems like what you're suggesting is to, and with Stephen also, is to change the village district to the town of Jackson.
Yeah, because I don't believe the state, and I don't have the state's RSA in front of me right now, but my understanding was you have, if you don't want it in the town, you've got to cover the whole town. But if you differentiate it between the two areas, you only eliminate one area, then the other area is still open for discussion.
Well, the statement and the voting that the select board has to put on is gonna cover the entire town. That statement that that has nothing to do with the zoning, Jason had recommended to the select board they have to put on at the town vote or the town meeting that they will not allow Keno in the town of Jackson, period.
So that would be separate from the zoning ordinance.
Correct. Then the zoning ordinance would then spell out, we're just modifying the existing section that says casino gambling today is not allowed in the village. You cannot open a casino in the village. All we're adding there is to say Keno, along with gambling, the casinos. So your line that, according to Jason, has to supersede us. So you have to do your thing, so the town says no for the town of Jackson.
And that is not the zoning ordinance.
That's
So we're not supplanting the other activity that the town is required to do to opt out entirely.
Right.
We're just identifying that Keno is a specific item that will be identified. And so if someone somehow doesn't see the ordinance that, or the fact that we opted out, they say gambling, it's like, well, what about Keno?
So if I summarize this, it's the selectmen have to put a vote to say no across the whole town.
And that has to go before the town meeting.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So we're just doing our piece. And I'm a little bit confused about that as well, because I was like, are we putting the cart before the horse? In other words, they have to do their piece, we have to do ours. Are we just doing this and that's going to opt out? And the answer is no, but it tells us that we are for sure identifying it in the zoning ordinance.
Because my concern is by just defining it as in the village, you're opening up Pandora's box for the rest of the town, because you do not address the rest of the town in the ordinance.
And again, we have a permissive zoning ordinance. If it doesn't say you can, you can't. And
Yeah, because we would have to change the
Rest-
residential area, because we don't have an exemption in that section. We only list things you can do.
Yeah, I understand.
So we would have to modify that to.
Yeah, my question is whether the state has superseded you on that.
Well, and again, we do permit small home businesses. this could be done out of such a business, I don't know, but I will also say that all we really are doing is adding Keno to what we already have in our ordinance, and we've not run into a problem with gambling in the residential district.
I think the only difference that's been brought up already is online gambling is something that probably wasn't around a long time ago, the way it is right now, and you could run it out of your house.
Although
If
with online,
you
you pretty much
could,
you just
if-
do it out of your house and,
Yeah, you
know,
could
by
if the
yourself.
if the state allowed it. If the state allowed it, I don't believe the state allows that, and there's another RSA on that. But that's not our business. Our business is not to do the state's business. Any other comment? Any other? Okay, I'm going to then close the public hearing. Thank you for attending. You're welcome to stay and listen to our regular session, or maybe join the concert across the way. We will now pick up our regular meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. All right, I hereby declare the public meeting closed and opening the regular meeting. All right, do we have, and here again, my public comment on any matter not be, or I'll wait for new business on the money.
Thank you.
Public comments on anything else? Anybody else have anything that's public? Because we have a new business section now.
That's right.
Can I ask a question about the Keno and gambling?
About what?
The Keno and gambling.
Yeah.
It's gonna go right in that next section.
If the town votes no on Keno, then if somebody should, not in the village district, opens a casino, a Keno, there's recourse, because the town has said no Keno.
Yep.
That's correct?
Right, and it's the state's recourse. We don't,
Okay, that's what I wanted to know who
yeah,
is
we're
responsible
not
for
responsible
policing
for maintaining state law, other than we would have to identify it to the
Okay.
state. They would have to take action. The Attorney General's office would come after them.
I gotcha. Okay.
And if you're a business, you're gonna open a business, you have to get a business application, the whole 9 yards,
Okay.
especially for a gambling permit. And they go, Jackson.
But if the town votes no
Correct.
on the ordinance,
Right. They said, yeah, we want Keno here. We, you know,
Yeah, that's gonna be the other side. In your statement that you're gonna put, if the town says yes,
well, the town would be saying no to the restriction. So that
well,
would
the
be,
way the
that would
wording
be
is
yes.
you have to vote no, you don't want it. You're voting yes, you want it, I think.
Are we adding a restriction that Keno is not allowed, that they'd be voting on it? but
Okay,
not
it's
be-
two different votes,
That's correct, it's two different
two
votes.
different votes.
The town vote from the select board is a blanket statement to cover this law, this RSA. And they have to say, yes, you want it, or no, you don't.
We haven't had our hearing yet, but.
Right? I mean, that's the challenge. If the town says yes, then we have a
Even though we
different-
already don't allow gambling. That
Don't allow
doesn't,
casinos, that's the why we're changing this.
Because there's a gap between
Correct.
when the town votes and,
And that's where Jason was saying that this is, your vote is the most important one.
Is this whole thing, is there a distinction then that Keno can be played, but it doesn't have to be played in a casino? Is
Correct.
that?
Mhm.
yes.
They put it in a bar.
You can have it in a bar.
Right.
You can have, you know,
I looked up what Keno is, I had no idea until
Oh,
this.
you got a card and yeah.
It's
And
all
actually,
electronic, it's an all
if you
electronic.
go to
game.
if you go to a casino, usually at the bar in the casinos where the Kenos.
Yeah.
I've heard.
I remember.
I've been
Well,
told.
I remember from my Tahoe days, which
A
was
friend of
like
mine.
late
Yeah.
70s. And I'm not aware that Keno could, the reason I was asking that is I'm not aware, can you just go into any bar and play Keno in some states or?
Some
It
states,
it was just,
in
it's to
Illinois,
keep
you
you,
can't.
it's
You
to
can
keep you
do-
gambling while you're sitting at the bar.
Right.
You're not, when you're not at a table or a machine,
So
you
you
can
don't
still,
need
you can just
casino.
keep gambling.
No,
Okay.
Illinois changed it where they allowed
Uh,
tabletop gambling in bars. So you had to apply for a license and you had to apply to
Sure.
get the machine, but it was a way to draw people into the
Yeah,
bar.
okay.
But it wasn't a full-blown casino. They couldn't do cards or craps or anything. It was just electronic games. Is what they defined it as, electronic gaming.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's allowed in this state.
Okay. Any other, we need to talk about whether or not on the short-term rentals, we want to stick with our language that we put together, or we wish to adopt the language that was recommended by council.
Or not make any changes.
Again, I don't see what change occurs if we adopt that council's language. So.
It's
to
just
me-
helpful to
To me, it's either
you.
Well, I think that-
Either we adopt what we already were considering,
Yeah.
or we don't do anything.
yeah,
We have three choices: withdraw, accept this, or accept the council wording.
Mhm.
And we get to vote on it.
Can you give us the council wording again?
Sure. Okay. Short-term rentals in existence in the rural residential after the time of adoption of the ordinance as of March 12, 2020, annual meeting, annual town meeting, and up to the date of March 10th, 2026, annual town meeting, for which an application of a conditional use permit has been received prior to March 10th, 2026, shall be exempt from the restriction of the number of annual rentals. I'm sorry, I read that as he's giving
He's
permission.
giving us, he's giving 5 more years of.
Yeah,
of-
I don't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Yes, he is. That's what
Oh,
he's
wait,
saying.
I
I
think
see.
that's what the words say.
That's what he's saying.
I don't
See that we want to do that.
Why?
see that we want to do
Yeah,
that. Thank
okay,
you.
yeah, okay,
You
yes,
filled out my sentence for me.
yes.
Thank you.
And then he says later on, when I questioned, he says, yes, it does not, my wording does not get rid of your grace period.
But he said short-term rentals,
After
After.
the time of adoption,
right, so
not
those,
prior,
not before the time of adoption.
right, which is what we want to
We're
say.
talking about before the time of
Right.
adoption.
Right.
So I don't, he doesn't seem to be addressing what we're doing,
Correct, and he says later on that his statement does not address,
what we're doing.
The grace
Can we
period.
get a statement that does address what we're doing?
he doesn't think we should, because I think his was, we should have adopted it at the beginning when we put in the original.
Well,
The
that was
time
my
period.
question, could we, it seems like they would be naturally grandfathered anyhow.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish he had said, no, you can't remove a grandfathered right, even if there's been a lapse, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it sounds like he's just saying that anybody that got a CPU after the adoption of our ordinance, we can't take it away from them, which we're not trying to.
Right. Yeah.
So I say go with what we have.
And I would change one word. and
I'll
that
second
is
that.
What word?
Application for a conditional use, not application of. Can't you apply for something?
Yep. So that really doesn't change the content.
No, it doesn't.
No, I'm
It's
saying,
just-
so we don't have to have a public hearing, just.
No, no, I'm,
So,
that's a housekeeping,
Sure.
like correcting a typo.
I mean, that addresses your issue, Bob. I mean, going with what we wrote addresses your issue.
Yeah.
And we just,
And that was our intention.
and you just wing it,
yeah,
and see what happens.
I'm supportive of that, for sure.
I mean, I wrote the thing, so I'm biased. Okay. I liked it.
No, I think it's very clear.
Hmm?
I think it's very clear.
It's saying what we mean.
Now, I just have one caveat, which could make it a little more palatable for people, is do we give them 90 days after the town meeting?
No.
No,
Because they won't know about this
Yes,
until
they
town
do.
They've
meeting.
had 6
That's
years.
why we have a public hearing, and we gave them 5 years in
Okay.
between.
Just,
That's
just
why we have a
have a
public hearing.
discussion,
Mhm.
trying to throw out all sides here.
I was wondering also how the March 10th date got chosen. Was that arbitrary?
That's your town meeting.
that's time.
It's a town meeting
That's
date.
the date of the town meeting, and that's it.
I'm sorry. That's incorrect. The modified
That's
language
the
is
voting.
March 12th.
That's the voting date.
Yeah, March 12th.
So you're changing it to March 12th?
No,
It-
I thought,
No.
we didn't
No,
change
we
it,
vote March 10th, right?
We vote on
We
March
vote
10th.
but
The
we
town
don't do
meeting
warrant
is the
articles
12th.
until the 12th.
No, warrant, this is a voted warrant article, it's on the ballot on March 10th.
Oh,
Yeah,
so it's not at the town meeting.
It's not at the
Right.
town meeting, it's voted at on March 10th.
Okay, so 10th, okay. So I was right the first time.
You could argue that it's not adopted until, they do
Blessing?
the blessing at the meeting. It says that the ballot, we did these things, including these elections,
Okay.
and they verify the vote.
You can still find out how the vote went that night, the night of the 10th.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when it, I think, would become valid.
Mhm.
Yeah, we,
And then this will go out publicly, right?
yes,
On the
we
ballots.
could actually have chosen to use tonight as the date.
Right.
Or it would have been as the annual meeting, but if we did not list a day,
We could have it tonight until town meeting.
yes,
Correct.
if we so chose,
But some-
without,
there's
this
someone-
gives a time between now and March 10 for somebody to get something in.
Right.
and make a claim.
Yeah.
Right.
That would most likely be hard for us to validate, or that person to verify, or with records, or.
Well, and that's part of it, is that at some point, you're not gonna, your ability to find the
Right.
ad that you did 6 years ago is, you're gonna have a hard
And
time.
the second, we only have one meeting between now and then.
Yeah.
And
So the
also,
planning board can't even
there'd
accept.
be a record of a Roman meals tax, right?
They'd be lining themselves
I mean,
up
that's
for
part
a
of
number
the deal.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they expire every 2 years.
Yeah,
So you'd have to go back and ask them to give us a copy of their
yeah.
Right.
You
one 6 years ago.
kept a copy.
It would be unusual circumstance. And is there gonna be one? Maybe.
It's in the next.
Be fun.
Be in the next 2 months.
Is there a point where grandfathering in general lapses if you lapse the activity that, so in other words, say a hotel closes, gets
Yes.
converted to residential,
Yeah, we have that in here.
Yeah,
and then down the road, someone decides to reopen a hotel saying that.
Commercial district or residential district?
Residential, because it was a hotel, because it used to be a
7
hotel.
years.
Hmm?
7 years.
Non-conforming.
7 years.
Yeah, you put it in there.
So, well,
So they have 7 years to reopen it.
Yeah.
right, I'm just saying that, would then 7 years be fine instead of 6 years here, as far as Jason is concerned? Jason seems to be saying that you just simply cannot shut down a grandfather.
No, he says it could be problematic.
Okay.
But no, he's,
Legal problem.
He said it
but he
may-
also said we had to change another thing that he was wrong about.
I get that, yeah.
So it's like, he's
I think
not
we go for it.
necessarily the best person to have be counsel. And he is suggesting, but I agree with Bob, it doesn't do what we're asking it to
And I
do.
agree with that too. It was more just,
Yeah.
I'm curious about the whole grandfather thing.
Again, who is that person who's going to want to do that?
I don't think anybody, I'm just pointing that
Okay.
out.
So do we
All right,
need,
it
It's my
says-
job here.
And then the question I would have is whether or not the select board at $295 for each of the days that the person has been out of compliance for 5 years might suggest that they might change the tune. Because that would be the counterclaim that you would have to make.
I don't see any problem with this, it was more, I'm just curious how
Yeah.
the whole grandfather thing works.
Yeah.
Because you hear a lot of different opinions.
and anything that limits short-term rentals in this town would probably get a vote yes.
Yes, yes, it would. I received a lengthy call 2 days ago from somebody I know, some of you know, Dudley Davis. He heard there was gonna be an ordinance going on that was connected to short-term rentals, and he just wanted me to know how he felt about them. And it was everything we already know. Character of the neighborhood, smelling pot, loud, people that don't care about it, the neighborhood. And then, and in his view, the owner of that property, you know, is not motivated to do anything about it for the purpose of preserving the character of the town or the neighborhood. And so he just wanted me to know that going in. He said, use my name. I said, and I explained to him what we were doing. We were closing, the intent was to close a loophole that people were
Potential.
claiming that was dubious.
Right.
And so he understood that. But it was a nice conversation. If you know Dudley's a great guy.
It's a hot topic.
What's that?
It's a hot topic.
I also had a phone call from somebody who's a short-term rental. I forget the guy's name, but he called, the office here referred him to me and they took the call. And basically said, I do short-term rentals, do I have to worry? Based on what is being proposed, and I said, based on the warrants that are coming up this year, no.
Right.
He
As
said,
long as he has his
As long
conditional
as he
use
has a
permit.
conditional use permit.
he has, he's had it, he had it within the first year, and he does all the good things that he's supposed to do. And we had an interesting conversation around a short-term rental owner's perspective is that, you know, my property is valuable. I don't wish for it to be abused or misused. If someone is renting that is not with the proper comportment, I'm never going to rent it to them again. And because my property is valuable to me. It's my home. He says, we're here, you know, 6 months of the year, whatever, and, you know,
That's what we want.
so there's a lot of different perspectives
Yeah.
out there that.
And to be fair to someone like Dudley, I think that even if the house is being rented in a responsible way, it's a different type of use.
Yeah,
You know, it's going to be-
absolutely, yeah.
It's going to be more, you know, if it's right next door, it's more disruptive in terms of, you know, peace and
Yeah.
quiet. You know, as I said before, if you have a neighbor that has a cookout once or twice a summer and invites a bunch of people over and there's, you know, a little bit of noise, no big deal, but if that cookout's happening every single weekend.
Yeah,
then
and
it's-
if someone has the stomach to change a short-term rental ordinance, thank you very much. Have some fun with it, because I'm not gonna participate with that, and I think you'd probably not find the end for it.
Okay, so we vote on,
So, we need to vote on these, and we need to vote on them individually. So, I think, are we good with discussion at this point?
Mhm.
Um,
okay,
I'll make a motion that we accept the short-term rental change as written,
With no modification.
no modification.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can I have a motion on the ordinance for the number of parking spaces as proposed?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Warrant to modify the ordinance for accessory apartments regarding ingress and egress regulations. Do I have a motion to accept the language proposed?
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Warrant to modify the ordinance on accessory apartments to limit the number of occupants. I have a motion to accept the wording as proposed.
No motion.
Second.
Motion, second. All in, any discussion, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and to do our part for the piece of Keno and realizing that select board, you still have work to do. Do I have a motion to accept our language to modify the ordinance for districts and district regulations regarding games of chance as proposed?
No motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And can I make a formatting suggestion as to how it appears on the ballot? If you can put in what is in the ordinance now and do a strikeout for what's to be eliminated and then italics or bold as to what's to be added.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people don't know,
Yeah.
okay, where does it go? If you can give the whole.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think we did that in the minutes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
We did it longer. I didn't take the whole ordinance, but I did to
Don't
do it
take
on
the
longer.
section.
Yeah, and the intention to pare this down was, I believe, because Julie's gonna ask us to pare it down. And so the question is, can we do that? And then we can have this as the actual backup that's available to voters. It doesn't necessarily have to be all the exact stuff, but to the extent that we can do it, because it's
Just
in
the-
short order, this is short
sentence.
order.
The
Yeah,
sentence.
yeah, this is why I think we can do that. For some of the others, no.
Yeah, like for the table, I could just make a copy of that table, top section. Because
Yeah.
the wording is in the table, it's not in the, it's weird. No problem.
All right. We have no short-term rental applications tonight. We need to reschedule our March meeting because, as usual, the town meeting seems to manage to be on our night, as opposed to the other way around, that we're on the town meeting night. I propose that we meet a week later, Thursday night, instead of the 12th, make that the 19th of March, I believe is the appropriate date.
Yeah.
I need a motion
So moved.
and a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Scott? And Mr. Bennett. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? New business. It's a new section. We agreed to put, David and I decided that we really needed to have a new business section in our agenda because we end up coming up with stuff that's neither appropriate as a public comment necessarily, and who knows what's happened between yesterday and today. And for me, new business item would be whether or not we need to modify our budget. What should our proposed budget be for this coming year? In prior years where we've had activity where we expect to have things like surveys or sit-downs and hearing sessions and the like, we've increased our budget. The other thing is that we likely will have some printing costs and some other things that are going to be associated with getting this thing put together. Our current budget, I believe, is like $1,500, which just barely covers minutes and buying books and the occasional person who signs up for one of the $200 sessions. For somebody who's new, and we wish to have more new people, that would be really good to be able to have more budget for that. But we don't have that, so.
And what did our budget used to be?
It used to be $10,000, and we would not spend it. And off years, we'd have $5,000 as a budget and not spend it. With the idea at the time, I believe that some of those funds would be used for legal fees, because we do actually use legal counsel. But I believe also some of that has changed because the select board basically ends up paying for that anyways. And so instead of putting it in our line item, they kind of clawed it back and said, we would like it in ours for whenever, and that's why we have to ask for permission when we need to go see council.
So I think between, doing a mailing, if we do a survey and the printing costs, we could easily use up another 1,500.
Easily.
And so the 5 seems like a fairly reasonable, and we're not gonna spend it if we don't need to.
Yeah, I don't sense that we're going to go out with any outside consultants. Did we do that last time? I don't believe we did. I was just coming on board when we were finishing up.
I don't think we use outside.
I don't see that.
Sent out a
When I
survey,
read it, it didn't
mailed out a
reference.
survey, right?
All right, and I don't really want
Is
to
that-
put a number out there unless
We
we're gonna
have done
spend it. I
surveys,
don't want
but
to put
I don't know
out
if
big
we can ask.
numbers and then you guys get, but I'd also like to put a number out there that you guys don't go back and say, yeah, well, it was 10, or it was 5, it should only be 3, kind of thing. If we pick a number, it should be a number that we say, okay, this, it should cover. And so we're not going to inflate it with the hope that you will cut it only in half.
Well, we typically don't do that as a rule, so.
We did it last year as a for example, without consulting the planning board.
And,
As a for example, I'm just using that because there is history of the select board, current select board, doing that in the prior year. So I'm just saying.
my question was, has anybody looked back to a previous budget when you increased your budget to do this kind of work? And is it, 1,500 is.
Yeah, I don't
mean,
remember us increasing the budget, but as Bill said, our budget was considerably higher anyhow.
Yeah,
15 or 10 or even 5.
yeah.
But I thought we did a mailing because I thought we had a comment section in it, and there was a lot of discussion about housing in that section. And I thought we did a mailing. I don't know if it went out. Maybe it can't go out with tax cards, and that might be an issue.
No,
And so I thought we did a separate mailing.
yeah. We're not allowed to add anything to tax it.
So the fact that I know that
Yeah.
suggests that.
I'm thinking 5,000 will cover. And it's likely going to be within $500 or whatever that.
Yeah, because printing isn't cheap anymore, and mailing isn't cheap.
I have a question. Within our work on the master plan, would we deal with the identifying the district boundaries? Remember, we've talked about the,
Well, that's an interesting, because that was a separate, I thought that was a separate thing we wanted to try to accomplish.
okay.
I think that's a good question, but I don't think that's a master plan question. The question was whether or not we would actually do that in concurrently
Right.
with that,
Yeah.
or whether or not we would recommend in the master plan that we, as
do
we
that.
have in the last two master plans, that we do that.
Yeah.
By the way.
I say we do it, but
So it's like, you know, we've talked about it for 20 years now. And so then the question is, do we make the effort, or do we have that same loop argument around, well, if we do this, then we expose ourselves to these other issues, and then we say we don't really want to get into that, and we stop. Which that's occurred now 4 times since I've been chair, and we've had the discussion.
well, I think we should continue to have that discussion, but head towards it if we have the time, if we're gonna do the master plan. It's gonna be time consuming, but if we could do that, the sooner we sort that out, the better. It's gonna come back and bite. It was bitten us a little bit already, but
Yeah, so here's the question. Is that one of those things which, as it has been in the past, in the master plan, where that is an effort that we would like to do, we identify it in the master plan, and then it's among the initiatives and goals that we set? Or are you suggesting that we should actually be doing that physically in this coming year?
I think that we have enough mandate from history to do it this year.
Okay, and that's gonna
Or
be,
head,
yeah, okay,
for it.
but that's a more expensive activity.
Yes,
I've
that's
gotten
right.
quotes on that, $35,000 for that activity.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I wanna put that into the budget.
okay.
This year.
What,
I would rather have us kind of flush out what we want to do, what's a plan, what's a time frame for us to do it in 2027, but we make that plan, we make that strategy, because then we could go to the select board
and
with
say, yeah.
a valid number saying, this is what we want to do, this is what it's going to take, we've talked to a couple of consultants, this is what it's going to cost, and when we create a budget, it's no longer, let's grab a dollar amount out of the air and say we want that, because we have to put the budget into you like now,
Yeah.
so.
And I
You don't have
don't
to
think
plan
we're,
the cost out.
yeah, I don't think we're prepared to do that.
And is this to remove the 500-foot
It's change it
to
Yeah.
a different,
to be something different, yeah.
to a different
Or
distance or a different?
define it, that's my point, we don't know what we want to do.
Well, in my question, I'm trying to envision
So
something.
the answer is yes, we would change that,
But
something different
but
from that, but
like a hard line.
who knows?
I just the idea of the sort of gerrymandering your way around property to property, which properties are included in it and which aren't.
God help us how we do it.
Yeah, God help us.
So that's what, I think that's why it's been put off for 20 years, and seriously put off for the last 4 years, is because it's a hard question. I
Yeah.
mean, tonight we talked about what's a residential or what's a village district,
Yeah.
who's in, who's out, and what does that define? I mean, people talk about a commercial district, and we don't have that. We have commercial businesses, but we don't have a commercial district, we have a village district, and we define it that way.
And in the village district, you're allowed to do commercial activities.
Yeah.
No, it's just the idea of drawing the line at this stage.
Yeah.
You'd have every property owner.
And
Well, that's-
and because you have brought this up, every time we've talked about it, we haven't done it.
Right.
And you were the one who has kiboshed it each time.
No, 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 I'm
No,
just-
no, seriously.
I'm not saying not do it, I'm
No,
just saying.
no,
I'm
no,
trying to-
you're the one
I'm
who
trying to see it.
has said each time that, oh, it's gonna be a problem, and we're gonna have issues, and if we do it, it's.
I guess what I'm
not-
asking, is that the option?
Well, that is one of the
And
options.
what
I
are the
don't
other-
know what the other options are, and we would have to probably likely hire somebody who is not us to help us through that.
Right. Unbiased.
I would think we could get some general options that we can then decide.
We could ask AI, I'm sure.
Right.
Or we
I mean,
could
just,
just
you
live
know,
in
it-
ambiguity.
To me,
Yeah,
how
it's gonna be
much
very-
energy we put into this somewhat depends on what the outcomes are that we hope to get to.
And I have to say that we have, each of the times that we've had the conversation about doing it, part of that has been because the select board office has asked it to do it.
So what are our options?
So, and we have basically said, we don't, first off, we don't have the energy on the board here to go at it, and nor have we ever budgeted for the expense of doing it. So I think that if we're going to look at that, and we put it in the master plan as a goal, that we have to understand that it has a cost associated with it, and that at some point, we're gonna have to budget to do it. And then the board is gonna have to agree that they wanna take it on.
Do we have an understanding of what the goal is for doing that? Like, what are we trying to achieve?
We have a distance from the road,
Yeah.
which means that our line crosses properties.
Mhm.
So whether a property qualifies for something that is restricted to commercial or residential, you know, how much of the property needs to be in one or the other, and it's very nebulous. I mean, it's clearly not a great way
And
to
the
do it. but-
flip side of the argument is if you open up the conversation, is the way we have our zoning ordinance structured to the point of the conversations tonight around permissiveness versus exceptions and the like, whether or not we really need to redefine the zoning ordinance to be something different and update it entirely, which is a whole different scope. And that could be scope creep, and that's the concern is that once you open the Pandora's box, whether or not you have a significant scope.
But at the moment, if you have a
Change.
property that's crossed by that line, you have no idea whether you're commercial or residential.
It came up this evening with
Yes,
Lisa Mosher, that said, oh, I was told I'm in the
Village district.
village district. Well,
no, she said she was in the residential
So-
district, but she had a commercial property.
right,
Yeah,
So, this would define nicely whether you are or not. And there'll be Old Jackson Road, I think that was one,
Correct, that was the big one.
that was a big one.
One side of the street, one side of the
See,
street,
you're doing it. That's not me.
one side of the street is
If
in
you
the
were to-
village, the
if
other
you
side
were
of the
to
street
take
is in the
yes,
residential.
yes.
Right, so anyway, it'd be a worthwhile project.
All right.
So if we did this, we would have that line surveyed, and there would be pinpoints that would be set, and then each
And-
property owner would be,
We would use
Toll.
each property's pin.
We've
But
got
what if
a
it's-
lot on paper already.
I saw that, yeah.
We would have to make some decisions around how we would apply.
So it'd all be on a case-by-case.
It may be.
basis
Right,
for
when it
each
goes right through the
property.
middle of a property or middle of a structure, you know, what do we do?
Well, it comes up a lot of times when the property is divided, but the home, the resident dwelling is in the residential side of the house, property,
And the mailboxes.
is the mailbox, is in the village district.
What if
It's
the
like-
garage is on one side?
Yeah, what happens if the
Yeah.
garage or their barn is in the village side? Does
And-
that qualify for the dwelling to be in the village? And, you know, and we've made exceptions for Wentworth in the short-term rentals. We consider everything in the Wentworth as part of the village. But yet the condos on the far northern section of it are actually farther than 500 feet from 16A.
Because the common land that they are all on
Mhm.
borders on the village district.
How many individual landowners are we talking about? That would be,
That's the homework.
Probably about 100.
Yeah.
okay.
So, I mean, seriously, it'd be roughly about 100.
It's a
I
fine.
don't know if it will impact 100, but then,
Yeah.
They would be
It'll-
interested
yeah.
in what we're talking about. So our town public hearing could actually be at the Whitney Center.
Or Black Mountain.
We could have that many people
So,
show
I
up.
was a little
Wow.
crowded the other
But
night.
my new business item was to ask what we should recommend to the select board as a budget for 2026. And I'm proposing that we recommend a $5,000 budget.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And you noted that the select board.
I noticed that.
Second.
I
Second.
noticed that.
I have one quick question. Steve, you've been on this Zoom for a long time here. Did you have a question, or are you just listening?
He's on mute, so,
But he should still hear me.
yes, I'm just saying, if he needs to talk, he needs to unmute,
I know. Okay, Steve, we're still here.
all right? Okay, we went by our time, guys. These guys wanted to talk, not my fault. All right,
No, not yet. I have something.
okay,
Okay.
Hate to inform everybody, but this is my last meeting. And
Whoa.
it's been a real tough year for me, and I've had to be on Zoom most of the time. It's tough getting here, wheelchair and all. And, you know, I really appreciate everything, the way the planning board has gotten a lot of expertise on it and has been doing a good job, really cares. I think back as to, you know, the question would be, well, how long have you been on the planning board? How did it all start? Back in the mid-80s, the state, I guess is soil conservation people or soil scientists, were getting the information that showed that you could, it really was a good idea to have a lot size that was big enough to take care of the effluent from your septic system. And soils are not consistent throughout the state. So they were proposing to have put in your zoning ordinance soil-based lot sizing. And so there was a group of us that thought that was a good idea and worked on it and worked up an ordinance and put it before the town, and it passed. So that was back in 86, 87. And about that time, the planning board was updating the master plan. That was the 88 one. And they were asking people, the citizens, to come and help with that. And I thought, well, hey, I've got background in teaching science and working with environmental conservation. You know, I can help with the natural resources section. So I said, I'll help. Of course, then that got me appointed as an alternate to the planning board for a few years, and then as things go, you move up to being a full member, and then I just stayed on the planning board, and we were doing all sorts of good things. I mean, back then I was in full health, and we had. I kind of went through the different things that we put together. We had we got the soils based, and then we also, at the Wildcat River was being threatened with hydro development, And a group was putting together, the only way we can prevent that from happening is if it were part of the Wild Scenic River program, the federal program. And there was a group in town that put together all of the requirements that you would need that set by the federal program and to get us. And we eventually got the Wildcat River as part of the federal Wild and Scenic program, so no hydro. And then we've done master plan 88. Next time it was 2003, third time. Master plan 16, second time 26 or 27. Who knows when it'll get done? Depends on how well it gets worked. We've also gone through 3 editions of the CIP, the Capital Improvements Plan. And if you'll look at your zoning ordinance, you've got on all of them, all of the sections, there's a date there as to when it was modified. You see how many times we've done a little tweak here, changed a 2 to a 1, added a whole section, short-term rentals, whole new section, groundwater protection, whole new section, solar energy, whole new section, towers, telecommunication towers, like what's up at Black Mountain. We had somebody from, actually it was from AMC, and said, hey, do you know that this is coming through? You really, if you had some regulations, you wouldn't have it dominating your town. So he helped us put together an ordinance which then has kept the towers up on Black Mountain so that they're not dominating the town. And then there's a lot of things that we've talked about since then. Trying to get a ridgeline ordinance in place, but that ended up being watered down to open spaces, I think, which didn't have much to do with ridgelines, but we tried. Trying to get the village district versus residential district, because we haven't solved that yet. Yeah, so planning board has been busy and doing what it's supposed to do. That's good. And I think you'll still continue to do that. And I won't be coming to meetings, but I'll still be in town.
We have
Available.
Zoom sessions.
Yeah, I know.
You can always be there for the public.
Yeah, I'll do that. Keep me on the mailing list for getting the minutes, so I
Got it, no problem.
keep in charge. But anyway, it's been quite a ride.
When I first sat down at this table as an alternate, I forget if you were sitting in the chair and then you scooted off to being a select board member.
Oh, right.
Almost.
And then when I actually sat down as a member, Sarah was chair.
Was it? I wasn't chair that long.
Well, you were at that moment, because Dick scooted off.
Oh, we used to meet upstairs in the town hall.
Right, upstairs, and, okay, I couldn't do that now.
I have
Not
the
lift
minutes, I have like a mimeograph of the minutes when it was, because the planning board and zoning ordinance kind of go hand in hand. And it was instituted in the 70s
Yes,
And
I
then-
think it's 72.
and then
so-
removed
Yeah.
in the early 80s.
73 and
So
then
it's
But I believe the
Adopted
very first
71.
planning board meeting was held
82.
at my parents' house, in the living room. And I swear, you can smell the whiskey and cigar smoke on the paper.
November 16, 1971. This was adopted.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
That would
you.
be-
You have a job?
You have one job to do, come on.
I would propose that we go home now.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night, Steve.
Good night. Good work, guys.
Recording stopped.
Don't yell at me.
Bobby, you just be-
I did not think that's an idiot.
I argue with the GPS too.
And it's 7
Always.
members of planning board. A lot of those people moved on to the next.
So if you look at the last couple of last pages in the zoning language, you'll see a map with a little magic mark.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we're trying to do.
I understand that, but I wanted to understand,
He was kind of limited until he
really, like, narrow down how big a job that was, and how much, that's what I figured.
Jane, just so